The following is an encore presentation of stories from the Dooralong Transformation Centre. You're tuned to 94.9 Rima Central Coast. We've got one of our guests from the Dooralong Transformation Centre with us, and it's Adrian. So good morning to you, Adrian.
Good morning, mate.
How cold is it out at Dooralong these mornings? What time do you have to get up at Dooralong, by the way?
Well, we're supposed to be up at 8 o'clock for a roll call, but that never happens for me.
Oh, I see. Yeah, okay. But a bit cool this weather, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets fairly cold down there.
Yeah, the pull of the bed is sort of stronger, I think, in the winter, isn't it? Yeah. But it's a good place to be, isn't it?
Yes.
You've been there how long now?
Just under 9 months, about 8 months and 3 weeks, I think it is.
Yeah. And it's going okay for you?
Yeah. Changed my attitudes quite a lot. Good. And behaviours, really. Yeah.
And you're not from the Central Coast. You were telling me you were from some suburb I've never heard of in Sydney.
Yes.
So try it out on our listeners. Where are you from?
So there's a suburb called Daceyville in Sydney.
Daceyville?
Yeah, it's in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. Don't be surprised if no one knows it. Even people from 5 suburbs over don't even know where it is.
Never heard of it?
Yeah.
But it's by the airport?
Yeah, pretty much. It's about a 5-minute drive from the airport.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's find out a bit about Adrian. The listeners can't tell this, but I can see Adrian is probably one of the younger guys we've had in here. You'll be in your 20s, early 20s?
23.
Yeah, so you're young. So you've got your whole life in front of you. You can just sort of get on top of this sort of addiction issue.
Yeah.
And addiction is this drugs that we're talking about?
Yeah.
And they came into your life when?
I was about 16 years old when I started drugs. Pretty much just due to, one was peer pressure mainly, because I went through a bad breakup with an ex-girlfriend who, she's probably listening to be honest, and it didn't end too well, so started off with cigarettes on the odd occasion, then it moved to me smoking 2 packets of cigarettes a day. Then I discovered I was smoking wrong because I wasn't inhaling the smoke.
Okay.
So then I started inhaling the smoke and I was smoking even more because I found it was a good stress relief. Then I moved to marijuana, and then things like ecstasy, and I was on ice for a little bit. I was on ice for about a year. The main reasons, I guess, partly was because I was a bit of a difficult kid.
Yeah.
I was always in trouble with my school teachers. In year 3, I think I did a total of, the first year of year 3, I think I did a total of 2 weeks of school, 2 or 3 weeks, because I was either suspended or I just didn't go to school.
That must have been a worry for your mum and dad.
Yeah, well, not so much dad. He left when I was 3, which is also one of the reasons why I can't deal with loss very well. My counsellor reckons it stems from when I was a baby, because he left when I was 3. But yeah, my mum was worried because obviously I wasn't getting a good education when I'm home 90% of the time. And at this time she was studying to become a businesswoman that she is now. And
difficult time for her.
Yeah. And she was young when she had me and my older brother, so she missed out on a lot of time in her life when it came, because she was a mother very young.
So you started these drugs when you were 16.
Yep.
You mentioned marijuana, you mentioned ice for a little while.
Yep.
What became the drug of addiction, or the main drug of addiction for you?
My main drug of addiction, which I'm in rehab for now, is speed and MDMA.
Yeah.
Which in the end it's pretty much the same drug because it's got the same base ingredient. Like it's all made from methamphetamine, just different cuts and agents. But my marijuana use was a very excessive one.
Do you think it was the marijuana that led to the harder drugs?
Oh yeah.
So when people say that, you know, if we legalise marijuana, it won't necessarily increase hard drug use, you would disagree?
Yes and no. Like, I'm all for medicinal uses of marijuana because I actually know someone who has a condition that his neurologist told him marijuana would help.
But leaving aside the medical
side of things, yes. Every other side, I'd say stay away from it.
Yeah.
It started for me with cigarettes, but then marijuana wasn't long after, and then not long after marijuana it was ecstasy, and then ice, and then speed, MDMA, acid, and it's just it's.
So by what age would you say you were an addict?
Oh, by 16.
16.
Yeah, a lot of people say you don't become addicted in one day, but I could actually remember the first time I tried ice was actually the same day I tried ecstasy, and from that first, I don't know what the technical term it is, but that first hit of ice, I was hooked. I just wanted more and more and more.
And what would you do to get the drug?
Oh, lie, cheat, steal, crime. Like it. One thing I've noticed about my drug use is you don't have a conscience. Your conscience really doesn't come into play. You sort of just think, I've got an addiction I need to feed. I'm going to do what I can to feed it. And
so you would hurt those people that you love?
Oh, yeah.
Because this is a disease, isn't it? It's not a choice. You weren't doing it by choice. It was, it was full-blown addiction. This disease has got hold of you.
I mean, we chose to pick up the drugs, yes.
Yeah.
But we didn't know how addicted we could be.
Yeah.
As some people with coffee, some people with, some people gaming's a big thing.
And it alters a sort of, it alters your brain, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Those addictive sort of parts of our brain, and you'll do anything to get your next fix.
And as I've been told, I've got an addictive personality, so I've got to abstain from basically everything.
Yeah.
Like I walked into rehab just identifying as an addict, but then I realised I'm an addict, alcoholic and gambler, because even though I didn't drink a lot of alcohol and didn't gamble houses away and stuff like that, it's just the compulsive need to have a drink or the compulsive need to gamble. And unfortunately, this day and age, it's everywhere. You walk down the street, you find a bottle shop.
Yeah.
Betting agencies online, on TV. It's a big industry.
So you what they call a poly addict? Does that mean that you can be addicted to not just drugs but other things as well?
Caffeine, for instance, with my coffee. I could get addicted. I used to get addicted to work because it was an escape. Basically just something that lets me not focus on reality.
What was wrong with reality then? Turning the clock back to when you're 16, 17, 18?
I don't think there was actually anything wrong with reality. I think it was more just my perception on reality was bad because I felt like the world hated me and no one loved me and all that. And looking back on it now, there actually was a lot of people that loved me. It's just I was pushing those people away.
We were talking, I think it might have been with Tyrion last week, but forgive me if it isn't or wasn't Tyrion. But I think he was saying that he always felt that he didn't fit in. He always felt that, there was always something different about him, and he could never fit in with social situations and things like that. So that would describe you as well. Yeah,
like even before drugs, I could sit in a room with 100 people and still feel alone. And the problem with drugs is that didn't solve that. That just made it worse. In the sense that when I was on drugs, I would still be in the same room with 100 people, feeling alone, but I was also numb as well from the drugs. So the drugs didn't really help. They don't really help the social side of things. It's more, I don't know how to say it. It's more like it's a way of life as a teenager, I guess, these days. And I mean, I'm a bit worried about my younger brother because he's a bit of a drinker now, and I don't particularly care because it's only alcohol. He hasn't touched anything heavier yet. Yeah, it could lead to it. Yeah. But I'm hoping he's seen what I've gone through and doesn't do it, which by the looks of it, he won't. He's like already looking into uni and looking into studying. And
so, you were 16 when you became addicted. You're only 23 now, so we're only talking about 7 years.
Yeah.
What happened during those 7 years? What led you to the point where you had to buck yourself into Dooralong?
Just the people I was losing. Like, I had a girlfriend for 4 years that she kind of banned me from all drugs except pot and alcohol because she was a smoker as well. And
so she was trying to look after you.
Yeah, but even on the pot, like as a lot of people know with pot, it alters your mind and it just twists things in your head, makes you paranoid, makes you can lead to schizophrenia, and I think I got to that point at one stage.
So hallucinations and things like this.
She didn't like me being on pot, so we quit twice. Both times were for about 9 months, and certain situations arose that made me start again. And then 1 year for her birthday, I bought a bag of cocaine, and she didn't like that. So on top of my twist of mind and things that were going on, she ended the relationship. We were still talking for a couple of months, but then we stopped talking, and basically once that had happened, I started the heavier drugs again, because from the age of 16 to 18 I was on heavier drugs, but then stopped, and then started again once I was about 20, late 21, early 22.
So what was your low point?
My low point was the fact that I was sleeping in a tent in a park near my mum's house. I was only eating the food that I was given to by my mate's parents, or
so you were homeless. You didn't have a job.
Yeah.
The living in a tent.
Yeah, and I mean, I was even lucky that I had that tent at my nan's house with my camping gear. Because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have had a tent. I would have had a cardboard box somewhere. And unfortunately, in Australia, our homeless rate is quite high.
So was that the kick up the backside, if you like, that you needed, or did somebody else have to give you a bit of a kick as well?
No, I'd realised myself I needed help. I just wasn't sure which help I needed. Because I first went into rehab under the Merit program, which, for people that don't know what that is, it's the magistrate's early referral into transition, and it's basically to do with any form of drug charge. It's a way of turning the person's life around.
So if you get into trouble with the police and through drugs and you're brought to court, they can. Is it an alternative to being sent to prison?
Pretty much. Like, we've got a lot of people that come from prison and they come to rehab to better their lives, and to be honest, a lot of them do change. There's I'd say about 95% of the people change. Reason why I say 95% is there is still that small percentage that are a bit resistant. Maybe the first time, could be the second time, could be the third. It depends on how many times they come back. But
so you were offered, or the magistrate offered you the choice of rehab?
No, my legal aid officer actually did tell me about it, and I asked the magistrate for Merit, and he was very happy that I chose that, because the courts like to see transformation rather than just sending people to jail.
Yeah, because that becomes a bit of a revolving door, doesn't it?
Yes,
jail, then you come out, hit the drugs again, and it's a vicious circle.
I've never personally been in jail, but I mean, you come out of jail, I've known people come out of jail and they don't know what to do, so it ends in a vicious cycle of just doing the same thing over and over again.
So you were trying to break that cycle before it sort of took hold of you.
So what actually kicked me in the butt that I needed help was my mate messaged me, my best friend, who unfortunately he introduced me to drugs, but he's one person that no matter what goes wrong in my life or what goes wrong in his life, I'm always going to have his back. And he knows who he is. Like, his family counts me as a son, and his dad calls me every now and again to see how I'm going.
So what did he do? What was the kick up?
He just messaged me saying, "How you doing, buddy?" And I'm like, "Not good, eh? I'm just gonna." I said, after this court case is over, I'm gonna book myself into a mental ward or a rehab or something. And that was before I even knew about the Merit program. And then when I got to court, my legal aid officer told me about the Merit program, and straight away I grabbed the opportunity.
And that led you eventually to
rehab,
to Dooralong.
Yeah.
Talking to Adrian from the Dooralong Transformation Centre. He was explaining before the break how he became an addict at the age of 16, although he's only 23 at the moment. It led to all sorts of bad sort of situations developing in his life, to the point that he was sleeping in a tent, homeless, jobless, sleeping in a tent at his nan's house. He's got into some trouble with the police, and he's been offered an alternative to prison, which was rehab, which he grabbed with both hands, I think.
Yep.
Now, you're a city boy. You come from a strange suburb that nobody's ever heard of in Sydney.
Yep.
So when they were driving you down the Yarramalong or the Dooralong Valley, what on earth were you thinking as that bus was bringing you to Dooralong?
Pretty much, I was like, what have I got myself into? Because I just going down, I think it's Dooralong Road and Jillaby Road.
Yeah.
All you really see is just farmhouses and farmers, just big lots of land. So I'm thinking, so I'm thinking, if I want to leave, this is going to be one long walk back to the main city.
Yeah, that's true.
And when I first got into the rehab, I was like, oh, this is mad. It's kind of looks like somewhere you could go camping, really. And recently I've been big on the whole camping and fishing thing. It's going to be some hobbies that I'm going to do when I get out of rehab. But I was expecting like hospital-like attitude and things like that.
People in white coats and sort of long corridors and this sort of thing. Yeah.
And it was none of that. It was
within the bush.
Within the first 5 minutes of being in there, I think I'd met about 20 people that it took me about a week to remember their names. But people come up to you and introduce themselves and say welcome, and I mean, the workers show you around, but then you've got other people that are willing to show you around a bit more. And
that seemed to make. I heard you talking to Mick and Kath on the Brekkie show, and that seemed to make quite an impact on you. The sort of friendliness of the people when you first got there.
Yeah,
something you weren't expecting.
The camaraderie and the maybe before I walked into rehab, I didn't even know what camaraderie meant. The whole camaraderie and just brotherhood and sisterhood and just the friendliness of the place made it so much easier to get settled into.
Because a lot of the guys that we speak to say that first week was touch and go, whether I just walked out of the gates, but you sound as if you quite enjoyed it from the word go.
I think because I knew if I didn't get this, I mean, the reason why I'm in rehab there was no jail time involved, but later on in life it could have led to jail time. And I think because I've had a lot of experience with counsellors and some group therapies and things like that, it didn't bother me too much. Don't get me wrong, I've had days where I've wanted to just pack all up and go.
So you say you've had counselling in your life before you went to Dooralong, and sort of therapies and all the rest of it. Is it different, the type of counselling and the therapies and the programs that you're doing at Dooralong?
Yeah.
In what way?
So the groups that we run and the meetings and all that, I was a bit hesitant to share in a group at first in the meeting because I was worried about people judging me, and I was a bit worried because I was still coming down off things, so my emotions were all over the place. And it ended up being that in my first 2 shares I actually ended up crying because I was talking about some raw emotions and things that, even though it's been years and years, it's still very raw for me.
So stuff that you'd bottled up or suppressed and sort of kept down.
And the funny thing is no one actually judged, no one laughed or anything. I mean, apart from when I'd said things funny and made them laugh, no one had laughed, and everyone was very, very comforting. And the group therapies help because it's like you can say something that's happened to you, you get the professional side from the group facilitator, and then you get sides from other people that may have been through the similar situations. And
does that mean that some people, perhaps even professionals or other people that you've known, have judged you in the past? I feel like some of the counsellors I've been to have been a bit judgmental. Same with teachers, same with students in schools. They put a label on you and that's it.
Yeah, like I got diagnosed with depression, anxiety and all that kind of stuff when I was about 12. I got diagnosed with ADHD as well. And then it developed into bipolar. That was from my pot usage, which wasn't a good idea. But yeah, I found a lot of the mental health issues were labels for things that us as humans don't particularly fully understand just yet. But that was my attitude towards it. There's obviously a lot of research into it and they know a lot about it, but there's still
a lot of stigma from sort of ordinary people, shall we say?
Yeah.
A bit frightened perhaps of mental health issues. You know, somebody's got a broken leg, they get sympathy. Somebody with a mental health condition, and people just don't know how to react, and perhaps they avoid that person.
Like with one of my bosses, actually, when I was a mechanic, I was working for him for about a year, and I told him how I had bipolar, and he sort of really freaked out a bit at first, because I think he's never had to deal with mental health in a family way.
It's ignorance, really, isn't it? Lack of knowledge.
Yeah, because some people just hear like bipolar or schizophrenia, and they don't understand that you can't control it. Like it's...
Yeah.
I don't care how much counselling and medication people take. There's days where you're going to... Even as normal people, we just want to be left alone, and you just hide away and isolate, and that's what I like about the groups in rehab. You can't isolate from the group.
No. Like,
you might be sitting there quiet for a couple of weeks, but eventually that group facilitator is going to get you to talk.
And does it help, do you think, that that most of the group facilitators anyway have actually been addicts themselves?
Yes, because I walked into the rehab with an attitude of, oh, these people aren't going to know what it feels like because they haven't been through it.
I can pull the wool over their eyes.
Yeah. And then when I found out that I think it's 90% of the staff at Dooralong have been through addiction of some sort, it sort of gave me a good eye-opener, because I realised now that this is a very big issue, not only nationwide but global, because I didn't know about AAs or NAs or GAs or SLAs or any of the kind of meetings that you can go to, and apparently they're everywhere, and they don't discriminate at all. I mean, yes, there are some men's meetings that are closed, men's meetings, there are some women's meetings that are closed, but that's because it's some people only feel comfortable sharing with the same sex, or like I've been to a couple of LGBT meetings, and to be honest, they're probably more welcoming than some of the normal men's meetings I've been to. Like, don't get me wrong, all the men's meetings are welcoming, but there's just this aura from the LGBT meetings that anything you say
is an acceptance.
Yeah. Same as men's meetings, but it's like,
I suppose the gay community, you were talking about mental health and people being stigmatised and sort of shunned. I suppose the gay community have also sort of been
shunned
on the wrong end of that as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I was actually shocked at how big drugs were in the gay community, because I've got a lot of gay friends, and it does not bother me, because that's their choice.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got you at Dooralong. Your hopes and dreams for the future, but also what you have made of the sort of Christian side of Dooralong, because you were telling me earlier that you didn't have a church background, so we'll just see how that sits with you. You're listening to 94.9 Rima Central Coast. We're talking to Adrian this morning, who is at Dooralong. He's been there for 8 months. He's really embraced the idea and all the programs there. He's getting a lot from them. What is it? What life lessons are you learning that you had perhaps missed out on as a teenager?
Basically just how to process emotions properly. I mean, as a teenager, majority of people, and including myself, have a lot of mixed emotions and mixed feelings about a lot of things, and I never worked out how to process anger and grief and loss very easily.
I think it's a problem, isn't it, for young boy teenagers. You know, bad things happen in your life, and you will get emotional, you will go home and cry, but as a teenage boy, that's just the perception is that's not the way to behave.
Yeah, to me, crying was
weak.
Not so much weak, but it was like I'd turn my sad crying into anger at either the situation or myself, and that's when it became dangerous, and it was bad because, I mean, I'd lose time out at school because I'd be suspended, or I just didn't go, or like I'd damage my room, damage property.
So I'm guessing you signed up for the anger management course.
Yeah. So I completed that already. That's good.
That's helped you.
As for managing anger, it's sort of just reminded me of different techniques because I've had about 12 to 13 years of counselling and psychiatry, and
so these techniques weren't new to you, but you didn't need reminding that they've got to be activated.
Yeah, and it reminded me that one of the anger types is explosive anger, and that's me. Like, I could be happy and then 2 seconds later someone scratched my car and I'm now next smacking someone's window in, or it's just it's explosive anger is a very dangerous one.
And the other one I think I heard you mentioning to Kath and Mick earlier was just generally emotional stuff, but this idea of codependency as well.
Yes. So I did another course called Codependency because they offer many different life helping courses: anger management, codependency, a course called Alpha, which is the whole Christianity course. And you're basically learning about God and stuff. And I was hoping to do that course before I finished, but I finished the rehab before it starts again. But I might possibly see if I can do something outside of rehab about that. But the codependency course has taught me a lot in the sense of basically how to deal with not only having to be a codependent person yourself, but if you meet someone later in life that's a codependent as well and they don't particularly understand that they are. Because a lot of people, I'd say about 70% of people in the world are codependent, but they don't realise it themselves.
And codependency is where you rely on somebody else to an unhealthy extent. You need
Pretty
their
much,
approval, you need their permission, and you sort of don't have enough value in your own self-worth.
Yeah, like with me, a big one was whenever my friends would ask me to come out, I'd always ask if my girlfriend can come, and I'd always ask her first if we can go, and it wasn't really until a couple of months into the relationship that I sort of just started doing things without her approval, but it was still, if I didn't get her approval, I'd tell her later on that I've done it, and that got me into a lot of trouble.
So it's this unhealthy dependence on somebody else.
It can lead to just bad situations in relationships where one becomes controlling, or you both end up being codependent, so you're both unsure what you want in life and what you're doing.
So, looking to the future, what does the future hold for the 23-year-old Adrian, who's now sort of looking at sort of finishing Dooralong in the next couple of months?
That's a good question, because I actually finish in about 4 weeks.
All right.
So my idea is to move down to Canberra because, yes, okay, I can find substances if I wanted to anywhere, but it makes it easier if I don't know where they are, and it's a whole new area, so...
It's a new chapter in your life.
Yeah,
clean break.
I only know about 5 people down there, and one I went to school with up in Sydney. The other ones are just his roommates or his workmates.
And will there be support networks? Will the Salvation Army help you establish a support network?
Yeah, they've pretty much already started that because they've set up... They sent an email to the core of the Salvation Army Church down there, and just to let them know I'm coming down if I ever pop in to see them. That's who I am.
Yeah.
And
well, that's good, because you feel as if you're not alone. That there's a safety net there, and it's a safety net that you're comfortable with. You know the Salvos well.
Yeah, like I haven't been to any of the meetings yet down there, but there are meetings down there as well.
Yeah.
Under a certain situation, I'm actually 5 houses down from the Salvation Army Chapel, so I can't really say I can't have an excuse to miss it, because
you're almost their neighbours.
Yeah, it's closer than the shops.
Which is probably good.
And I'm not a big church goer, as I was saying previously, but I will utilise the church when I can. If I'm ever feeling down or just need some support, I'll go to the church, and because I've never been a godly person, and I think I blame sort of the reason why I don't like church on the fact that I don't understand God completely. Hence why I wanted to do the Alpha course, because it explains a lot.
Maybe that's something you can do when you get down to Canberra with the Salvos there.
Yeah, because they've got a rehab centre down there as well.
Oh, right.
They've got one in every state, so it's fairly big community down there for them.
Yeah. And be careful you don't confuse the church with God, because the two are separate.
Well, that's the thing I've looked at. Like, it's the one thing I've taken out of the church is not so much the godly concepts, but the life experience concepts. A lot of the preaching that's done in the chapel on Sunday and on our chapel night on Wednesday is more about life lessons rather than preaching about God, and I think that's why I kind of enjoyed it a little bit.
So it's a work in progress. Yeah, it's a journey that you're on.
Yeah.
Look, it's been great talking to you this morning, Adrian. So we're going to have to sort of say goodbye to you. Yeah. But as far as other people, if parents of 16-year-old kids listening to the program today, you were 16 and you became addicted. What advice would you give to the parents if they see their kid going off the rails? Is there anything they can do, or do they just have to sit and watch the sort of train wreck unravel?
Well, look, it all sort of depends, because, I mean, you can't really help someone until they want the help. But, I mean, if your kid is sort of mucking up a bit, you can sort of try and just encourage them to do good things, stay active, play sports. One of the best things to do is playing sports.
But just be there with unconditional love, and don't do that thing that you were talking before, like judging people.
Yeah. And if it has gotten unfortunate to a situation where you think there's no hope, take your child to a meeting, get them to Al-Anon or Al-Anon, depends on your situation.
Reach out for help. If
you can, possibly contact a rehab, and one I would recommend highly is Dooralong, because it's a long-term rehab that it's called a transformation centre for a reason. It does transform people.
And look, it may not be appropriate for 16-year-olds, but the resources they've got there, even though the transformation centre isn't going to be appropriate for young kids like that, they would have telephone numbers, and they would know all the agencies, and if you told them what the issue was with your child, they would know in which direction you should be heading. Yeah. Okay, thanks, Adrian. I'll leave you to go, because you've got some work to do in the grounds of Dooralong. You're working on a truck there, and you've also got a big night tonight with Chapel Night.
Yes.
Yeah. You've been listening to an encore presentation of the Dooralong stories, which can be heard live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. and repeated 8 p.m. Sunday and 1 a.m. Wednesday, right here on 94.9 rema.cc.